A warm welcome to the second video on the controversy in the wake of the Chief Justice of India's visit to the temples in Gujarat, particularly focused on the justification he himself offered for doing so. And as I revealed in the previous video, I'm doing my reflections on this episode or this event, encouraged by a very distinguished judicial officer. And in the last video, I made a general statement saying that being the Chief Justice of India and being responsible for the adjudication of justice to a country as vast and diverse as India is not a small task, and therefore, if a person feels that something more than human intelligence, the strength of erudition, as well as the training and objectivity that the legal profession presupposes, by itself is not enough, and therefore he needs to seek something more than human wisdom and inspiration to do perfect justice to the very sacred responsibilities cast upon him. I'm the last person to have any problem with it. In fact, I find it very laudable, and I would readily agree with Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud that seeking more than human inspiration in the discharge of duties, the scope of which far exceed unaided human efforts and capacities, is indeed a very sensible, natural, and necessary thing. So I have absolutely no problem with it, unlike many others who think that the Chief Justice's position is untenable. So let me make that very clear. In the last video, I also said that invoking the authority of Gandhi as the rationale for visiting temples in order to derive divine inspiration is a bit problematic. And the arguments I have shared with my viewers in that video, I don't propose to repeat here. What I propose to do from now onwards is to read out two particular sections from the article carried by the Indian Express and the quotations from the Chief Minister, Chief Justice of India, and then offer my comments on these two statements. Now, the Indian Express story, and I'm reading from Ram Guha's article where he quotes the Indian Express statement. The Indian Express story contained these lines. Justice Chandrachud said that he had started visiting various states inspired by the life and ideals of Mahatma Gandhi to understand challenges facing the judiciary and to identify solutions, adding that his two-day visit to Gujarat was part of the same effort. Now, let's put the facts in front of us. It is a historical fact that Mahatma Gandhi, prior to his full-time engagement with the political struggle of India for freedom, undertook a discovery of India pilgrimage kind of experience, and therefore there is a precedent that the Chief Justice of India can invoke. Now, whether it is an exact precedent or to what extent this precedent is relevant to the goals proposed by the Chief Justice or goals stated by the Chief Justice is a bit problematic. Gandhiji undertook the discovery of India journey mostly by train, traveling often by third-class railway compartments, in order to be closer to the people, in order to understand the lived realities of the people, in order to attain a degree of identification with the people of India. Whether that indeed was the focus in Justice D.Y. Chandrachud's visit to various states, particularly to Gujarat, is something that only he alone can testify. I have my reservations about it. It's very unlikely in these days that when the Chief Justice of India travels, he will be able to interact as freely and get to know the people of India in their actual living conditions as directly and intimately as Mahatma Gandhi was free to do. When the Chief Justice of India moves or travels, he is covered and protected by the protocol provisions. And therefore, it's highly unlikely that even in comparison to the journeys undertaken by Rahul Gandhi, whether he was free really to encounter the realities of India to the extent that Mahatma Gandhi did and to the extent that Rahul Gandhi is doing in this generation. Secondly, for whatever reasons known only to the Chief Justice of India, he has chosen the scope of the statement very, very vague. Now, to say that there are huge problems in the organization of the judiciary, not problems, the word he uses is challenges. There are indeed huge challenges, humongous challenges. It's not an easy thing, and I've said that repeatedly. Now, the reality of the challenges, the reality of the daunting task that's cast upon him is one thing. And the means he proposes to acquire the additional charisma, additional insight, additional wisdom, additional inspiration to cope better with those daunting tasks, responsibilities, and challenges, namely visiting various states, and within that, making a special point or laying special emphasis on visiting temples as if to derive some kind of inspiration, divine inspiration, from these temple visit experiences. That to me is problematic, and I need to state very briefly why I consider it to be problematic. Now, I have no hesitation in agreeing with Justice D.Y. Chandrachud that getting to know the people of India, the ever varying, infinitely diverse conditions that prevail in our country, which is also the beauty and wealth of our country, unity in diversity, is certainly an advantage. There's no question about it. Because one problem with the practice of law, and we have courts of law, not courts of justice, and it's not the occasion for me to comment on my reservations about the juridical process itself. Maybe that's substance for another video. So, if you have attended legal proceedings in a court of law, you will realize that much of what happens there happens in a state of complete isolation from the realities of the life that people live. It's a verbal exercise, it's a legal jugglery. Precedents are quoted, arguments are advanced, all kinds of subtle, sometimes outlandish, sometimes obscure, sometimes very clever, sometimes very tricky. It's a kind of mishmash of various things. And to be precise, let me share with you my experience. I've been dragged to the court several times as part of the strategy to unseat me by those who felt enraged at my commitment to the Christian values of St. Stephen's College. Now, when my cases came up in the High Court, and in the initial stages, I used to go and sit there in the court just to get a feel of how things were happening. Believe you me, I'm not exaggerating. The way my cases were actually handled in the court made me feel that I'm a complete stranger to my own case. That is as much as I would like to say about what happens in a court of law. So, it is not only that the legal procedures that happen in a court of law by way of trial, etc., happen in a state of isolation from the lived realities of the people of the country. That alienation is so acute that the processes that happen in the court make even the defendant an alien to his own case. It's that bad. It's that bad. And therefore, the need to have to deal with this kind of experience used to make me feel very, very frustrated, out of sorts, ill at ease, in spite of the fact that I had absolutely no doubt at all about the 100% fairness of my defense. Anyway, I'm sure many of my viewers are aware of this. Therefore, I need not go more and more into this problem. So, there is certainly a case that the Chief Justice of India makes of the need for the judicial system to be more and more integrated with the lived realities of the life of the people in this country. The question that needs to be raised here, and that's simply because that's the focus of the article, it's not something that I prefer to do. This is what I'm required to do because of the nature and scope of the article which is under discussion. Now, the specific question that comes up here is, what is the relevance of temple visits in all of this? That's the issue. Is it the Chief Justice's case or argument that by visiting various temples or places of worship, I'm not religion specific, I have nothing against any religion whatsoever, but I am very critical about the assumption that organized religion can enhance anybody's sense of justice. Rather, I am convinced that the more religious you are, the more disabled you become in respect of the impartial adjudication of justice. This is something that I'm absolutely convinced about for the simple reason that the very logic on which religions function as against spirituality, when I say religion, I use that word in a very, very specific sense, as completely contrary to the realm of spirituality, which is a realm of light. Let me make it clear, otherwise it will pave the way for misunderstanding. My understanding of this whole phenomenon is that what we mean by religion has two parts. One is the originating sublime context which generated very precious, incomparably worthwhile, absolutely profound spiritual insights, moral guidelines that are of undying significance and unlimited value, not just to a particular religious community, but to humanity as a whole. So, spirituality is a realm of light, and spirituality is always focused on God, and God understood in terms of the four universal values: truth, justice, love, compassion. And therefore, if the Chief Justice of India were to say that I am convinced, that is, he is convinced, that his understanding and management of the very daunting responsibilities comprehended in the office of the Chief Justice of India will be boosted, rendered more healthy and effective and exemplary if he has spiritual enlightenment. I would fold my hands in front of him and do obeisance to him, because that's the truth. Because the sense of inspired justice the spirituality can kindle in a person is absolutely incomparable. But my contention is that when the religious ferment gets organized in the form of an established religion, that is not just my view, this is the view of almost every social scientist who has studied religion. And here let me cite the foremost text in this context, which is The Sociology of Religion by Max Weber, where he says that every religious tradition begins with that spiritual ferment which generates this incomparable spiritual insight, the light of the world. But over a period of time, as a community forms itself around this original spiritual ferment, a priestly class emerges from within the community. Then they hijack the entire religion. They hijack the scriptures, they hijack the doctrines and dogmas, and they also hijack the rituals and sacraments of that religion. And thereafter, it's only the vested interests of the priestly class that dominate the way that religion continues to be managed and practiced thereafter. Therefore, he goes on to say that over a period of time, religious decay sets in, so that religion in this organized form becomes a contradiction of the original spiritual vision and the ferment which generated all these universal ideas and ideals. And I am fully one with Max Weber's theory. And that's what I am presupposing in my arguments. So, if the Chief Justice of India were to say that he believes that he would be better able to discharge his duties as the Chief Justice of India if he were to attain some spiritual enlightenment, I'm totally one with him. But I'm afraid I cannot be one with him if he is under the assumption, I almost use the word delusion, that by visiting various temples, he will attain enlightenment. To the best of my knowledge, there is not a single instance of anybody having attained enlightenment in any place of worship belonging to any religion whatsoever. I belong to the Christian community. If a Christian judge were to say that by visiting various churches in India, he would be able to strengthen, refine, and ennoble his sense of and commitment to justice, every Christian will laugh him out of court. There is a saying among Christians, closest to the church, farthest from God. Closest to the church, farthest from God. And this is not something that's just arbitrarily said. If you read the four Gospels on which Christianity is based, Jesus himself cleansed the temple because the temple had become the foremost symbol of practical atheism, complete denial of God, and by making the temple a marketplace, the temple a marketplace. So instead of God being worshipped, is mammon being worshipped, and that's the condition of all organized religions. And therefore, and furthermore, every religious community trains its members to be partial. In fact, religion itself works by making God partial towards that community. Every believer is taught by every religious community, at least the priestly class of every religious community, that God will be partial to them. That's why people talk about their gods as though gods are the private properties of certain individuals. No one actually talks about belonging to God. Everybody talks about God belonging to them, which is an absurd thing. I don't know why these absurdities are glossed over or overlooked. Therefore, my conviction is, and that's based on my half a century of experiences within the church life, religion as religion will only ruin, corrupt, cripple, disable what modicum of the sense of justice a person has. I'm reminded in this context of the words of Voltaire, the great French thinker, who puts it very well when he says, "No man is a more cheerful killer. No man is a more cheerful killer, murderer, than the one who thinks he's killing for the sake of his God." That's enough. That's enough to convince anyone that religion as religion does not promote a sense of justice in anyone. Rather, it is inimical to any sense of justice that even the residual sense of justice that a person has, because the commitment to justice is not proved by clamoring justice for oneself. It's proved necessarily by the commitment that others should have justice. Now, I can cite instances after all the night through to prove that the more religious a person is, the poorer his or her sense of justice is. And the foremost example of this, of course, is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which was stage managed by the religious leaders of the times in order to protect religion from Jesus, who came to be the friend of the poor and the liberator of humanity and the dispenser of justice. The crucifixion of Jesus Christ is the most unforgettable example of the inherent incapacity to deliver justice from within a religious perspective. Therefore, with this background, I find it extremely difficult to agree with Justice Chandrachud that by visiting various states, yes, but by visiting certain places of worship, he would be able to equip himself better to deliver justice to the people of India. Is something that I find extremely hard to believe. Now, let me also share another portion. It's a long article. I'll just bring one more issue for discussion and then I'll stop. Now, let me read it out. The Indian Express story also contains some other remarks made by the Chief Justice which bear thinking about. This is Ram Guha's words. And he quotes, these are the words of Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, the Chief Justice of India. Referring to the Dwaja means flag on top of the temple. Referring to the Dwaja atop Dwarka and Somnath temples, which he visited during his 2-day visit to Gujarat, the Chief Justice said, what did the Chief Justice say? Now listen very carefully. I'll read slowly so that the words sink in. I was inspired this morning by the Dwaja, the flag, at Dwaragadish Ji, very similar to the Dwaja which I saw at Jagannath Puri, another temple. But look at this universality of the tradition in our nation, which binds all of us together. This Dwaja has a special meaning for us. And that meaning which the Dwaja gives us, there is some unifying force about all of us as lawyers, as judges, as citizens. And that unifying force is our humanity, which is governed by the rule of law and the Constitution of India. For all my respect and appreciation for Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, I have to say that he's completely confused. Otherwise, a man of great clarity of thought and adequacy of expression. In this particular statement, I hope this is a correct quotation. I can't believe that Justice D.Y. Chandrachud could make a statement like this. Let us examine that statement. I'll take a little time over it. I hope you have the patience to bear with me. He says, I was inspired this morning by the Dwaja at the Dwaragarji. Now, as a practicing Hindu, he has every right, absolutely every right, to feel inspired by the flag flying atop the temple that he reveres. And he says that this is similar to the Dwaja, the flag, atop the Jagannath Puri temple. But then now the problem begins. He associates universality with the flag. Now, mind you, this is flag on top of a temple. In what sense is a temple universal? I don't know. How the Chief Justice of India can say that the flag flying on top, I can understand if he says this of the Indian national flag. It has a universal significance, universal relevance, universal appeal that goes without saying. But the flag of a particular religion cannot have universal appeal. He is not saying to the Hindus. He is saying to the citizens. Now, surely the Chief Justice does not mean to say that in India only Hindus are citizens. Surely he cannot be meaning that. And therefore, there is a problem when he attributes universality to the flag flying on top of the Dwaragadish Ji temple. Okay. So, but look at this universality of the tradition of our nation, which binds all of us together. That is, he's saying this. I have no problem with saying that India has a wonderful tradition of promoting unity in the midst of diversity, of celebrating diversity as an essential aspect of unity, realizing that there can be no unity without diversity. So I can understand that and I accept it fully. But to say that the flag on top of a temple represents that particular universality is seriously problematic. This Dwaja is referring repeatedly to the flag. This Dwaja has a special meaning for us. When the Chief Justice of India makes a statement like this and repeatedly refers to us, to us, to us, what's the scope of that word us? There's a serious problem there. And that meaning which the Dwaja gives us, who all are included in this word us, is, and what is the scope, the meaning? There is some unifying force above all of us. Now, who is this us? And then he goes on to say, as lawyers, judges, and citizens. Now, clearly, he is only referring to lawyers, judges, and citizens who belong to the Hindu community. As a constitutional functionary holding the most exalted constitutional post in the legal context, the Chief Justice of India cannot say that the flag on top of a temple unites all lawyers, all judges, and all citizens, which is factually incorrect. I don't have a religious problem here. My problem is factual. Here, it surprises me no end that the Chief Justice got carried away, maybe in a fit of religious fervor, and he issued such a statement. And that unifying force is our humanity. Now, to say that the unifying force symbolized by the flag flying on top of a temple symbolizes our humanity, surely he means only the humanity of the Hindus. What about the humanity of those who follow other religions? I'm not an ardent preacher of any religion. I was a preacher of Christianity, but 7 years ago I stopped, realizing that I was doing serious harm to myself and to others, because I discovered, it took me over a period of time, I discovered that religions are organized more on the foundation of falsehoods than on truth. Therefore, I found it impossible to carry on with the work I was doing, and I've dissociated myself, I've detached myself from this religious activities altogether. And I can tell you, hand on heart, that today I live a more peaceful life in which I can respect myself and I can stand and face my conscience without flinching. So, that the flag serves as a unifying force for us as lawyers, judges, citizens, and I've indicated the problem I sense there. And that unifying force is our humanity, which is governed by the rule of law and by the Constitution of India. Now, that's why I say that unfortunately, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who is otherwise a man of great clarity of thought, precision of expression, commendable erudition, deep understanding, and capable of taking a principled stand on issues, all of which has won for him my respect. But I'm afraid, from an academic point of view, I've considered this statement very disappointing. I refrain from saying that it's shocking. I find it very disappointing because it's a complete mismatch. It has absolutely no clarity. It's not the kind of statement that I would have expected an alumnus of St. Stephen's College to make. Anyway, be that as it may, let me conclude by making one final point. We can go on and analyze and say whatever we want. After all, we have freedom of opinion. But I also believe that all citizens of India, have to use their freedom of opinion with great responsibility, circumspection, and accountability. Now, when a person makes a statement in public, I have to remind myself that these public statements are made spontaneously. And therefore, it is unfair on my part, it's unfair on the part of anyone, including Ram Guha and others who feel aggrieved by the Chief Justice's statement. It's unfair on our part to expect scientific or clinical precision vis-a-vis every word that he utters, particularly when a person is making a public statement somewhat under the influence of a profound religious experience or religious feelings awakened by the visit to the temple or temples, etc. one must leave a wide enough margin for a certain degree of blurring of the distinction between the religious and the secular. Now, for example, you test it out for yourself. If you're a Christian, on a Sunday, you go to the church. Don't enter the church. You just stand on the church compound. The way you experience the world standing there just on the compound of the church, not even inside the church, will be different from the way you experience the same world as you come out of the compound and stand on the street. That is why I say that I'm happy to leave a wide margin of, say, the exaggeration, the twilight nature of the statement, that is, lack of clarity and consistency, and occasional strong inclination, likelihood of misunderstanding being promoted, coming as it does from a person who holds such an exalted office. I'm quite willing to leave a wide enough margin for the fact that these are spontaneous statements made in a particular emotional state, and therefore, every word uttered by Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud should not be taken as the last word. Secondly, and this is something that I say because of my training as a man of literature, one of the things I have known through my half a century of tryst with literature, study of works of art, novels, plays, etc., is that, and also my own struggle as a public speaker, there's always a chasm, a dissonance, sometimes a contradiction between what a person actually wanted to say and what he actually ends up saying. And this is all the more so about spontaneous statements. Now, it was during the Romantic period of English literature that this concern came to the fore. In fact, the stereotypical romantic poet is one who is so overwhelmed by the sublimity of his romantic vision and who wants to convert that into a poem, but is completely unnerved about the inadequacy of his linguistic ability or the capacity of the language to transfer the sublimity of his inner vision to the reader. So he is reluctant to write that poem because he feels that in writing a poem based on the sublime state within him, he will corrupt that state. This dilemma is real. And I have often experienced it, though I'm not a poet. I've been a writer of prose. But oftentimes I've come to the brink of the poetical even while writing prose. And that was because the ideas that I was handling were of that kind where the mere resources of prose weren't enough to do justice to the particular idea I was handling. But even then, I felt that between the actual purity and sublimity of the idea that I was trying to articulate and the extent to which I succeeded in articulating that idea, there was a shortfall. And because of that experience, repeated experience, I'm willing to accord to Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, the Chief Justice of India, a certain leeway, a certain margin of charity in judging his statements. And that's where I find Ram Guha quite deficient. He goes hammer and tong after the Chief Justice of India. Because, as I said in my previous unit, those who sort of go around wearing the hat of secular thinkers, they are also very fundamentalist. They are fundamentalists vis-a-vis their secular premises and principles. Therefore, they are very happy to damn anyone who even marginally deviates from the lines that they draw. I don't think that's being human. I believe that the Chief Justice of India is primarily a human being. And as a human being, he has a fundamental right to practice his religion. He has every right to draw inspiration from the spiritual core of the religion he practices. But as a highly educated person, as a highly trained mind, a person of such incomparable experience and therefore insight, understanding, wisdom, it's also legitimate on my part to expect that he be a little clearer about what religion is, what spirituality is, and the unmistakable fact that the values and ideals that the Chief Justice is looking for are to be found in the realm of spirituality, which is God centered. All these values that we talk about are essentially the attributes of the nature of God. They're not attributes of any religious tradition. You cannot see a single religious tradition which is committed to the practice of justice, period. You cannot see a single temple devoted to justice. There may be a temple devoted to even a rat, but there won't be a temple devoted to justice or truth or compassion. Of course, there is something called this. I visited that temple, Sankat Mojan temple. If you go there, all your Sankat, all your suffering will go. I visited that temple soon after. There were explosions, bomb explosions there, in which several people were injured, some died, in Varanasi. But I have not seen a church, a gurudwara, a mosque, or a temple dedicated to justice. And I have not seen a priestly class belonging to any religious tradition standing out heroically and consistently for justice to be administered to everyone equally. I have not seen any priestly class belonging to any religion in any century, in any country in the world, standing for equality, for the freedom of all, for everybody to be treated alike in the eye of the law. I have not seen that. And we know that temples, all places of worship, churches, I can say with authority only on churches, and therefore I limit myself to the conditions. Churches are a place where the authority of the priestly class reigns supreme. God has really nothing to do with it. It's the dictates of the priestly class that rule the roost. And believe you me, I have not seen in half a century any recognizable commitment to justice within the life of these churches. If you want an illustration, just think of this most depressing conflict between the Orthodox Church and the Jacobite Church in Kerala, where one church tries to grab, snatch, and take away the entire property of a sister church. The Jacobite Church will lose more than 1,000 churches with all the building, property, allied institutions to the Orthodox Church if the Supreme Court verdict of July 2017 is implemented. So the Orthodox Church is very happy to prosper at the expense of its sister church, the Jacobite Church, and the Orthodox Church will not allow a particle of justice to stand in the way of becoming richer by 6,000, 7,000 crores overnight. I'm citing just one example. I can give you umpteen examples. I do not associate organized religion with justice. Therefore, I find it very hard to believe, and Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, an alumnus of St. Stephen's College, says that by visiting various temples and by drawing inspiration from the dhwaja, or the flag flying on top of place of worship, he would equip himself to discharge his duties better, and particularly at a time when he is due to retire. I can understand his undertaking this at the time or prior to his assuming office as the Chief Justice of India. He has only a little over a month left. And for him now to go around and do all this and say that I'm equipping myself to do greater justice to my duties as Jesus of India somehow does not carry weight. All right, well, this is all I have to say for the time being. There is a great deal more to be said, but I think this will do for the time being. It's already, we are approaching the 40 minutes mark. I should not test your patience too much. Well, thank you very much for the interest all of you have shown in my line of thinking as far as this important issue is concerned, and I wait to hear what you have to say on the matter. Thank you. All the very best.